Hello everybody, my name is Kushi and I'm going to be reading you Mr. Tickle and the Dragon. So let's start. Mr. Tickle was having a very good day. 21 people, well, truly tickled. A very good day indeed. But when he arrived home, he could not believe his eyes. I can't believe my eyes, he said to himself. Somebody has burnt down my house. Mr. Tickle's house was gone. All that was left was a smoking, charred pile of the end of his garden path. There was more smoking rising from the end of the lane, and Mr. Tickle set off to investigate. The smoke was coming from Mr. Funny's shoe cart, or rather it had been his car, but all of that remained was a burnt shoelace. Mr. Tickle would see another special of smoke in the distance. This time it was Mr. Clever's house, and very nearly Mr. Clever's pie took of him. He'd just gone out in time. Mr. Clever, there can be only one culprit. It must have been but Mr. Tickle did not wait to hear that. It must have been. He had spotted the signs of another fire, and it was determined to follow the trail. It was a long trail which led from Mr. Chatterbox, burnt out his phone box, to Farmer Fields, burnt down, barn, and on through Wilder Blicker, led up into the mountains. Soon it began to get dark, but Mr. Tickle continued to climb higher and higher. Darkness had fallen when he saw a bright light. In the distance there was a cave emitting a red glow. Suddenly, Mr. Tickle did not feel very brave. Suddenly, he wished he had stayed to hear that Mr. Clever had to say. But Mr. Tickle decided to wait until the morning. He curled up into a bush and wrapped his arms around himself 3 times to keep him warm. Mr. Tickle fell into a prickly deep sleep, and the sun was up when he was woken by a rustling of the bush. Mr. Tickle opened his eye.
Opened on eye.
On eye.
An eye.
An eye. The bush rustled again. "I know you're in there," rumbled a deep voice. "Come on, show yourself." Mr. Tickle conveniently poked his head through the top of the bush and stood blinking in the bright sunlight. He was quite prepared for the sight that met his eyes. He was standing face to face with a dragon. A huge dragon with smoke curling from his nostrils. Mr. Tickle gulped. "Hello," said Mr. Tickle in a tiny voice. "I'm going to give you 30 seconds to give me a good reason why you shouldn't burn you
Why I
to
shouldn't.
crisp. Burn you to crisp," bellowed the dragon, "and then I'm going to burn you to crisp." Mr. Tickle gulped for the second time. Mr. Tickle needed to think fast. He realized his arms were hidden quick as a flash. He sent one of his arms, and extraordinarily long arms, sneaking through the bushes and under the dragon's belly. Mr. Tickle felt his fingers and popped beyond everything that the dragons were ticklish. The dragon instantly crumbled into a giggling laugh. Tangled the group. "Ha ha ha ha," roared the dragon. "He he he he," was the dragon. "Ho ho ho ho," boomed the dragon. Stop it," he cried. "I'll stop tickling you if you promise to stop burning things," said Mr. Tickle. "Anything, I promise, anything," pleaded the dragon. Mr. Tickle stopped tickling and looked the dragon squarely in the eye. "What have you need to learn?" said Mr. Tickle, "is to put your fire breathing to good use. You should be using your astronomy skills to make people happy. I'll show you," said the dragon. "Lay down on the ground," said Mr. Tickle. The dragon lay down on the ground. Mr. Tickle hopped on his back. Then the dragon shook out his great wings and took off, curling high over the mountains and swooping down to the distant valleys. They flew over and lower, passing over the barns and cottages. "Look," cried Mr. Tickle, "it's Little Miss Splendid house. I have an idea for you. First good deed." Mr. Tickle and the dragon stood beside Little Miss Splendid's house swimming pool. "It is too cold today to swim in Little Miss Splendid pool," said Mr. Tickle. "Do you think could you do anything about that?" The dragon thought for a moment. Then he took a deep breath and breathed out through his nostrils. Flames licked across the surface of the swimming pool. In no time at all, the pool was steaming. Little Miss Splendid was delighted. Mr. Tickle and the dragon and Little Miss Splendid had a very enjoyable swim. In fact, the dragon was enjoyable too. Enjoyable day. He melted the ice on Mr. Bump's path, and Mr. Bump couldn't have been happier, as most of the things he actually slipped and bumped his head. He warmed up Mr. Forgetful cup of tea, which he had made at breakfast time and forgotten to drink. Mr. Forgetful was delighted. He didn't normally get to drink hot tea. And Mr. Greedy was very impressive when the dragon cooked 15 sausages all at once. By the end of the day, the dragon had a big golden smile across his face. "Do you know what?" He boomed cheerful. "I feel good. Mr. Tickle grinned and he reached out his extremely long arms and tickled the dragon. And now I do too, he laughed. That's the end of the story. I hope you love it. See you next time. Bye.